What is up, everybody? I am going to go over some full body mobility today using some tools such as a dowel. You can also use a broomstick as well. I'm also going to go over some stuff with a yoga block, a kettlebell, and 2 tennis balls or 2 lacrosse balls. So that's the equipment I'm going to be using. You can sub these without equipment. You don't have to have equipment. You could use pillows instead of a yoga block, and the weight is really just to add load, so you don't need this. But if you have it, you'll be able to use it. So we're going to start with the wrist and the dowel or the broom. So if you have a broomstick, that will be fine. What we're going to do is go into a supinated elbow position. And then what I'm going to do is begin to hold onto it with one hand and then begin to supinate it further, okay? So I'm going to bring my hands out front, elbows at a 90 degree, and then I'm going to begin to stretch it. So it's beginning to over supinate. Okay, so I'm stretching out the elbow here and the wrist, squeezing onto that dowel, just like this. And then what you can do from here is just stretch that position out for about 2 minutes. In this case, we're just going to do it for about a minute, just so I can show you different exercises. And then from here, what I'm going to do is try to press this dowel into this top hand, trying to break the dowel, basically. 10% to 20%. 20 to 30%, 30 to 40, and then from here, trying to go deeper into supination, trying to lift the dowel off of the hand, so trying to go further into supination, trying to turn the other side of the joint on, using the bicep, and relax. Okay, so then we'll switch side. So hold on to it with the opposite hand, and then from here, holding on to it, lifting the opposite side up. You should create further supination of the wrist when you do that. So if you're holding on tight enough, elbows at a 90 degree, just going to push this upwards. You should feel a good stretch throughout the whole palmar flexor there. And you'll even feel it going across into the top of the arm. Squeezing that dowel as you're stretching it out. And then from here, what we're going to do is try to push that dowel into this top hand, trying to break the dowel essentially. 10% to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, holding it here. And then trying to go deeper into supination by trying to lift the dowel off of the hand, but you probably won't be able to. So you're just attempting to, so you're turning on the posterior side of that tissue and the bicep to try to over supinate and then relax. Okay, so that would be supination. And then you can do the same thing with pronation, where you can over pronate. So over pronation, over supination. So pronation here, elbow at 90 again, but this, instead of going up, we're going to go down. So once we bring that dowel down, you'll feel that stretch go across of the forearm. Make sure that you're holding onto the dowel with a good squeeze, because if it's loose, then you're probably going to cheat a little bit. So just do it without any pain, holding here. And you'll feel that stretch on the top of the forearm here when you press this down. Make sure the elbow's at 90, make sure you're squeezing it nice and tight, pushing it down. And then from here, what you can do is start trying to press this dowel into this bottom hand here. So you're almost trying to essentially push it through the barrier. My hand's the barrier. Create an isometric contraction, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. Hold here. 5, 4, 3, 2. Now we're going to try to over-pronate, try to lift the dowel off of the hand. If we're in our end range, we probably won't be able to, but maybe we can squeak out maybe just a centimeter away from the hand, going deeper into pronation without too much flexion of the wrist, and then go back to your passive hold. Okay, so that would be pronation, pals, push into the barrier, rails, try to pull away, go deeper into pronation. So other side, elbows at 90 degrees. My wrist and elbow are pronated here. Okay, and then we're going to press the dowel down, just like this. Okay, you should feel that stretch on the top here. Okay, or the posterior tissue here of the forearm. So you feel that stretch, squeezing, using your biceps to squeeze onto the dowel, finding a good line of tension, however that may be. That's why I'm kind of moving around. And then once you find a good area and you kind of hold there passively, breathe, inhale 4, exhale 8 for about 2 minutes. And then after about 2 minutes, start pressing that dowel into that bottom hand, trying to break that dowel, but you can't because the hand's here. 10% effort, 20, 30, 40, 50% effort. And then trying to pull that dowel away from the hand, going deeper into pronation of the wrist. Trying to turn the tissue on the opposite side of the joint. The regressive side, which would be the forearm, trying to pronate even more away from the hand, and then you found your new end range, and then you start again in your pals and rails from here. So that's how you would instruct pals and rails for the forearms, right, or the wrist or the elbow. Okay, pronation, supination, and then you can also grab the dowel underneath and around. So you're in a flexion pronation position here. And you can do the same thing, stretch 2 minutes. And then pals effort would be trying to go like this, but you can't because my hand is here. And then rails effort would be trying to go further into this position. Okay. So again, just like that. Okay, it's a really good stretch right there. One, if you can't passively hold this for 2 minutes, then you want to work on just being able to passively hold it for 2 minutes. Then when you reach 2 minutes, you can begin to add that load, or maybe even just see if you can get into that position for 2 minutes would be the goal. Okay, if you can't, then don't worry about adding any of the pals and rails stuff yet. So also what I like to use the dowel for is external rotation of the shoulder. Okay, so I get into this position here, my shoulder is externally rotated, so it's going to look like this, but you're looking at the side view. Okay, I have my hand on this bench here. Benches and other tools like yoga blocks and stuff are really good for utilizing during FRC work. So if I'm in a collapsed kneeling position here, I got my hand here to create more stability and irradiation, and then I have my hand here on the dowel pushing into the ground using irradiation and force from my shoulder, my chest, and then I have my core here where I can really get into a good position to utilize all the force. From here, get into an external rotation of the shoulder, my right arm, for example, could be your left arm, that's fine. And then from here, my chin is in, I'm not kind of going like this. And then I'm just going to find a good position for my shoulder here that feels good. Inhale 4, exhale 8. And then our PALS effort from here would be to press this dowel into the ground. We're not going to move anything, so I shouldn't be moving my head. I shouldn't be moving my body. I'm just pressing that dowel into the ground, starting with my forearms, my bicep, tricep, my lats, my abs, my back, everything I'm beginning to kind of contract 10, 20, 30, 40% effort in this external rotation position at end range. And then once I've hit, 50, 60%, maybe my maximal effort for about 10 seconds. Then I'm going to rails contraction, trying to go further into external rotation. So what I would do is actually release the grip and then try to go deeper into external rotation and allow that hand to slide up the dowel. And then after about 10 seconds, go back to your passive stretch, just like that. So that would be a good one for external shoulder rotation here, if you're trying to gain a little bit of strength and end range here, or if you're trying to recover that external rotator. So switching side, again, back view, it'll look like this. So different angle here. Again, my shoulders at external rotation on this left side. Right hand and arm is on the bench. Chin is in. Pressing the dowel down into the ground in my passive range. So that's a frontal position. Or that was a sagittal. This is a frontal position here that you can see. And remember, try to find the line of tension. So just because you went in this and it worked first doesn't mean it's going to be the right. You might have to kind of figure out where that tension feels best. Shouldn't be any closing angle pain. From here, breathe, inhale 4, exhale 8. Then what you can do is start digging or start pushing that dowel into the ground, starting with the hand and forearm to the bicep, tricep, lat, rib cage, erectors, opposite side, pushing into the bench, pressing the feet into the ground, squeezing the core, pressing the dowel 10% to 20, 30 to 40. Trying not to move anything, trying not to jet my head forward, 50 to 60%, and then to your safest, greatest effort for about 10 seconds. And then release the hand grip, but keep the intensity high as you go further into external rotation actively, and then go back to your passive. So that would be shoulder external rotation demonstration there. And then after that, it'd be good to go through some quick shoulder carves. All right. So for the block's good for using for hovers and for liftoffs. So if I'm in the butterfly position here, I can use this block to be a tactile visual cue to lift that foot up and around and over the barrier. So you might see some yoga blocks in kin stretch classes uses barriers like that, or you might see them used as passive range liftoffs where we go into hip flexion here, knee extension, and we try to lift off of the object, and then we can modify the levels and therefore neurological recruitment and control. Okay, just like that. So you can do a passive range liftoff. This would be in hip flexion and knee extension. Okay, if we want to make this, I guess, challenging, we could always stack blocks or use something like a bench and then use the same process. So I could do the same thing here. Say modified hands behind, lift off, or more advanced, squeeze the hands, inhale, radiate. And then if you want to advance, you put the block on top. So it's always better to have that sensory feedback, because without it, it's hard to kind of guess like where you're at, right? So I can go up here and really understand that, okay, I'm going to learn from this assessment how much space I have. Inhale, radiate, and then lift off. And now if I want to make that even harder, I can point the toe and I can create little circles above that area. So inhale, radiate. And then relax. Ooh. Good luck. So what's cool about that is without those barriers there, going like this, I'm probably gonna be a lot, further down. So you're able to change and kind of control those ranges a lot better when you have barriers and when you use tools. So you actually can build a better workspace when you actually utilize stuff like this that kind of gives you visual perspective and allows you to assess your current capacities. Yoga block, good for the shoulders in the prone position. So the prone position on your stomach, and we'll start to use the tennis balls and lacrosse balls. We'll get to the kettle in a little bit. But basically what we're going to do is get to the prone position. Prone position, you can do a lot of good things here. So one, I just kind of extend my toes, or I'll point my toes and press the tops of the toes into the ground. Just depends on what I want to do for my toes. For my knees, I'll lock them. I'll keep my quads tight when I'm kind of moving around in space. And then for my core, depends. Now, I will definitely use everything when I'm doing some lift-offs here, including my core, my glutes, everything, to control that range. So using the block, you can hold on to a lacrosse ball, you can have, or a tennis ball. The opposite hand can be a rest point here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to inhale, radiate, and I'm going to kind of go over the block here in the prone position. So what am I working on? I'm working on shoulder flexion, okay? And end range here, which would be regressive angular load here. So I'm going to bring my forehead down, inhale, radiate. And then inhale up, around. Now you can advance it by either going like this or bringing the barrier closer to the lever, okay? So I'll bring it a little bit closer. Okay, and then we can also test this here. And then you can use the block to produce force in end range. So you can do isometric loading in shoulder flexion by squeezing the ball into the block into the ground, turning all this tissue on here, pressing in, isometrically contracting as hard as you can, and then rails you can just lift off using the opposite side of the joint and tissue, and then relax. And then you can advance, make it harder. Same thing. Pressing hand into the cross ball, into the block, to the ground, trying to turn on all this tissue that's being stretched. Squeezing from 10 to 100% after a 2-minute passive hold, and then lift off. You can also perform some circles here. Okay, and if shoulder flexion is in a weak area, you can also train out here, and you can also train back here. Okay, and shoulder extension. Do your lift off. So what I'm doing here is I'm pushing into the block, lifting off, and then I'm doing an axial rotation at the glenohumeral joint. So what that basically means is internal rotation to external rotation in that shoulder extension position. So extension, external, and then internal, external, and then internal. And we'll get the other side. So again, lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, a block or a pillow. I don't think it matters, right? All right. It's going to do a couple hovers over the block. And try not to bring your scapula along for the ride. So try not to raise your shoulder to your ear. And you can make it harder by bringing it closer to the lever. All right, and then you can go into extension. Actually, you can go into that flexion position with your pals and rails, pressing into the block, turning all this tissue on here, pressing into the block, and then pulling away. And then making it harder. This feels like a good stretch. Hold it. Inhale 4, exhale 8. And then begin to start pressing the block into the ground. Turning your lats on. Biceps, triceps, forearms. And then lift away. Squeeze the ball. And then go in circles. Other way. And relax. Okay. Now you can do the same thing and do this on the right side, but you can go into your external rotation here at the shoulder and perform a lift off. Which feel really good. You lift off and then pronate the wrist and then supinate the wrist. And really squeeze that tennis ball or lacrosse ball. Okay, get the extension. A lot tighter for me on this side here. I'm all bunched up. So, I mean, in that case, you hold it longer. You should give it more trials. You should do more cars on that side too. So from here, pressing the hand into the block. 10% to 20, 30 to 50, and then lifting away. And then you can begin those axial rotations. Try to squeeze the ball and move the forearm, bicep, and shoulder all at the same time. And relax. Whew. All right, so that would be the shoulder capsule, working pals and rals, flexion, extension, and I showed you the external rotation. Okay. For the kettlebell, for internal rotation at the shoulder, use the block for support, head support, and then here, bring the hand on top of the kettlebell. Your knees are at about 90 degrees, your hips are flexed about 80 degrees, and you're in the fetal position. And then from here, what you're going to do is hold onto the top of the kettlebell where your buckle or your belt line is, and begin to just stretch this bottom shoulder here and shoulder internal rotation. You should feel a good stretch going across the shoulder. Okay. And what we'll do is just hold here, passive, breathe, inhale 4, exhale 8. Just focusing on your breathing. Now, if you don't have a kettlebell, all you would do is this here, okay? If you don't have a yoga block, this is what it will look like, okay? It's just nice to have the block or a pillow or something there, and then it's nice to have this kettle here, because when you start amping up the force, you can use this as a great barrier, okay? And so when we pull into our pals contraction, and when we push into our pals contraction, we're going to try to lift this off of the ground. And then our rals contraction, we're actually going to try to press it into the ground. So we're going to stretch out here for about 2 minutes first. Should feel that good stretch. Back of the shoulder should be on the ground, shouldn't be off the ground. Should feel a good stretch here. You might have to move around and find a good position. So Not everyone is going to feel this the way I feel it in this position. Then from here, I'm going to start trying to pull this kettlebell off the ground from 5% effort, 10% effort, 20, 30, 40% effort, 50%, 60, 65, 70, all the way to 80, and then holding here. 5, 4, 3, 2, and then trying to slam this kettle into the ground as hard as you can. 5, 4, 3, 2, and relax. Okay, and then you can do some internal, external here. And we'll switch sides. So if you've never done this one, call this the shoulder sleeper stretch. Very controversial. There's a lot of people that don't actually like it. But that's okay. So hands on top of the kettle here, head's relaxed, fetal position, knees are stacked. You're just stretching the internal rotators here. Should feel like good stretch going across. Hands at the buckle line, the belt buckle line, or the hip line. Elbows at about a 90-degree angle. The back of the shoulder is on the ground. Head's resting on a yoga block. If you don't have a yoga block or a kettlebell, it'll look just like this. You don't need the kettlebell. You can use this top hand to bring it down, or you can use this kettle to get that stretch. You might not even feel it with the kettle, so you might have to use the hand to push it down like this anyway. So this is just an option. Holding here. Breathe, inhale 4, exhale 8. So you can do this basically almost anywhere, right? You could do this while you're laying on the side of your bed, on a couch, and on the floor. You can do this against the side of a wall in the standing position. You can bring your hand behind your back and bring it up your back if you're seated right now, just like this. You do that. And then push into your back, paddles, rails, pull away from your back. So from here, we're going to start pressing, pulling, trying to lift the kettle off of the ground. 5%, 10%, 20%, 20 to 30%, 30 to 40%. Safe effort, no pain, 50 to 60%. Hold at 70 to 80 for 5, 4, 3, 2, and then push the kettle into the ground. Just try to slam it into the ground. 5, 4, 3, 2, and relax. So that would be internal shoulder rotation. And you can go back to external, internal. All right. So the last thing we're going to finish up with is quick 90-90. What we'll do is get in the 90-90 position. We have our lead leg and our trail leg, or our front leg and our back leg. Okay. So what we're going to do is set up, trying to have a straight back. We're going to look in the direction of our front leg, knees at 90, foot is in line with the back, shin and ankle. Looking forward, leaning forward, holding here. Trying to have an arch, keep a lordotic curve. Prevent kyphosis here. Extend the upper back, chin is in. And then from here, we're going to lean forward. Breathe. And then from here, we're going to see if we can extend the arms off the ground here, hands off the ground. Breathe and hold, squeeze the fists for 10 seconds. You can see how low you can go without arching or rounding the upper back or rounding the lower back. And then we're going to push away from the ground and then turn toward our back leg. Reach in that direction and see if you can grab the ankle and the opposite hip. From here, you should feel a stretch, an internal rotation here. Breathe. And then from here, you can extend the arms, press the back leg into the ground. And now try to pull this back foot off the ground. Turning all those internal rotators on. And then relax. From here, we're going to transition. So we're going to go to bear first. We're going to open this back leg up first. Externally rotate tibia. So foot goes out. And then when we need to, bring the back leg off the ground. And then internally rotate that back hip. And go to 90-90 on the opposite side. You're facing that front leg, lean forward. Breathe. And then from here, keep the lower back arched, chest high, chin in, arms off the ground, squeeze the fist. You're going to lean forward and hold. Three, two, and then press into the ground. And then from here, rotate toward that back leg. Reach for the wrist or ankle, back hip. Should feel a stretch right here. Trying to get this shoulder close to this back foot. Keep this knee down. You can use your hands behind you to corkscrew yourself back. And we're going to start pressing this back leg into the ground. Turn the tissue on the inside of the leg on as you contract it into the ground. 10% to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40. Safe effort, no pain. And then hold your max effort for 5 seconds. And then try to pull that foot off the ground by turning the outside hip muscles or the internal rotators on. Foot probably won't leave the ground. Might get a cramp here. Holding that for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then we're going to transition back to the other side. That's going to do it. So we went over shoulders mostly today and wrists. And then we finished up with a little bit of hips there. So thank you for participating and we'll see you later. If you have questions, let me know. And Micah's in here.